Um, Good day, everyone, once again. It is still your humble Professor Reasonable, and we are still talking about divorce, but now we are looking at, in this section, we are looking at some of the factors that are actually responsible for the alarming increase in divorce crisis today that makes it actually a global change that is sweeping the world. And we have said, like in our previous discussion, that ignorance education is one of them, sexual social relations. Here we'll be talking about virginity, nudity, rape, as the case may be. Then the logic and emotion orientation of man and woman, freedom, drug abuse, polygamy, polydoggy, partnership, and ownership concept in marriage. These are some of the few factors or issues that we'll look at that are actually affecting our marriages that people don't really take note of. Let me put it that way. These things I'm going to be talking about, it's not as if we really don't know about them, but we don't really pay attention to them as we pay attention to issues of sex. My wife is not giving me enough sex. My husband is not satisfying me well, like most women will say today. My wife is not cooking for me good food, and so on and so forth. We are not having discussion. There's no much understanding. You now realize that people don't know that the education we have acquired is actually affecting us, whether you like it or not. We are going to look at it, how this is happening, and they don't know that this education can be, if you really don't understand it very well, it can be a hindrance in our marriage, and so on and so forth. So I would like to start from, I remember we also said that we are going to, like in our previous discussion too, we actually distinguish between the different kinds of world that the world has actually progressed through, and we'll be relating, we needed to do so for us to be able to analyze these factors one by one. So I will take this off. Okay. I'll take this off. Then we'll be looking at ignorance and education. Now, I'm leaving sexual social relations here so that because as I'm talking about these, I might be making mention of using some of these terms for us, because they kind of go pari passu. So now you will agree with me that in the slavery world, a lot of people were ignorant, of course. People generally were not educated. Now, this means that education, just like they say, education is power. Education is light. This is even the reason why people were enslaved. It means that, like if you notice, the powerful nations who began education earlier in time were the ones who had, small super ideas, better, superior events and inventions, and they were able to use these ideas and inventions to dominate the rest of the world, like Africa continent, the Asian continent, who had not really begun any formal form of any formal system of education as at that time, and eventually we became victims of slavery. So, as slaves, we didn't have any form of human rights. Our rights were not respected. We were dominated. The African people were subjugated. In fact, slavery is the second definition of slavery. Let me put it that way. Now, also, even in the colonial era, ignorance was still predominant. Most people were not educated. And this is why you see, and so that time in Europe, for example, formal education had already, started really and have developed to a great extent, such that they were able to develop super ideas or superior ideas as compared to the ideas to which Africans or the Asians were running their societies. And that was why they were able to formulate the colonial ideas and made events and inventions, and they were able to dominate the African continent and other continents that were colonized. And even as at the time we began to gain independence and military came on board, people were still very much, ignorant, uneducated. Now, compare it to this smart world where there is competition for education, where in every household, everybody wants to go to school. Now, you now realize that in today's world, it is actually very difficult for you to actually enslave somebody. People are now more aware of their dignity. People are now more aware of their freedom. People are now more aware of their human rights. You see advocates of human rights here and there. If they never went to school, they would not have understood all these things. So now, let us relate it to marriage. When the women who lived in the slavery era, what choice did they have? It was easy for the husbands to dominate them, for the husbands to subjugate them. It was easy for women at that time to live under men. Let me use that word because then they say you live under a man. But in today's world, you discover that no woman wants to live under a man. Yes, today women are increasingly becoming aware of themselves. Women are increasingly becoming aware of the freedom they can have. Women are becoming even advocates of rights for women. You see today they are increasingly talking about the girl child education. Yes, when a girl child goes to school, she becomes more free, more enlightened. She becomes a superhuman. She becomes a superwoman. She becomes a woman a man cannot just ordinarily dominate. A man cannot just subjugate. You can't just take, her right away from her as an educated woman. So, you now